Okay, welcome everyone. It's Kelly Boone here again from Tech and Learning. Thank you for attending today's Tech and Learning Virtual Leadership Summit. Today's topic is going to be new learning models. A special thank you to today's sponsors, Guide K-12, Now Forecast 5 Analytics, MediaSite, Prezi, Nuriva, and Boxlight. I want to remind everyone to log into the Conference Hub using the links that were sent in your confirmation email. Once in there, you can visit our sponsor booths. There are Zoom meeting links set up with each sponsor. If you connect with one of our sponsors on Zoom through their booth, you will receive 20 extra entries into the Passport to Prizes. We're going to be pulling those at the end of the event today. So after today's session, you still have a little bit of time to go visit them to get your entries, and then we will send out an email with those winners. You'll also be able to see your personalized agenda, and you can also network with today's attendees, speakers, and sponsors through the registrant directory and chat features. The registrant directory will be up for almost a year, so you'll still be able to find people if you need to. However, the chat features obviously will be taken down. You can access all of the conference resources in the downloads and resource section. We've been trying to post them, any messages that come up with chats, in the chats with any resources. We've been trying to get those up in the download sections, and the recordings probably will be up by the end of the day today. Couple housekeeping items. If you have any questions during today's presentation, you can use the chat feature within Zoom. However, if you can hold your questions till we open up the live Q&A portion, you'll be able to unmute yourself and actually ask your questions out loud. And last but not least, as today's session goes on, please use the conference hashtag TLTechLive for all your social media posts. So I'm now going to pass it over to your moderator, Matt Joseph, who's going to start today's session. Matt?
Awesome, thank you so much. And we do have 3 presenters in about 42 minutes, so I don't want to take a time here because I had an opportunity to actually look through the presentations that they have, and each one of them could give an individual session, so I don't want to take any time away from them. But what a timely time to have this conversation about new learning models and having a chance to read through each of them, and very different, but all with a very similar theme. So you are going to get a great cross-section of different ideas, topics, and methods. And we are going to start off with Rick, who's going to talk about the technology core piece of this. And it was something I read through, and I don't want to go too deep into it because I don't know enough about it. I'm going to turn my mic off and be a learner as well. So take it away. I love to hear what you have to say, but the last thing I will say is if you do have questions, usually with 3 people, we don't have a lot of time at the end to do a Q&A. Put them right now and I'll see them and I'll jump in to ask the speaker as well. So Rick, feel free to jump in and look forward to hearing what you have to say.
Thank you, Matt. When kind of thinking about some of the things that have happened for the last year, or the last 6 months anyway, regarding this, the COVID and how we've responded to it, one of the things I was interested in was taking a look at how we respond to this sort of an instructional perspective. So the idea of a learning model is what does this mean instructionally to us? And so we're kind of take a look at just sort of how we've approached this and sort of how we approached it originally, and then what we're looking to do coming this fall, what differences we want to see. Oh wait, do I have can I share my screen?
So Kelly, if you wouldn't mind just taking your screen off, and then Rick can jump in. All right, you should be set to go now, Rick.
No, it's disabled. Wait, did it come on now?
He will see it for the first time. I'm sure he had something to do with this.
There we go.
All right, good.
Beautiful. So for us, is it there? Wait, have I got the right screen? I think I just hit something.
If you select that one and then present, we're ready to rock.
We're good. So for us, kind of the reaction in the spring when it happened was sort of like a hurricane evacuation. Basically, COVID hit. We had, as I'm sure everybody did, a couple days to kind of respond, and out we went. We were fortunate that we did have we had a group of people who could meet the Friday before we had to leave, and we were able to start back in on that Monday without much of a loss of time. But for us, fundamentally, our theme was the idea of compassion over compliance. So we really pushed the idea of this is sort of a new experience for teachers, a new experience for kids. We didn't want to have anybody really get hammered in any way academically, given what was going to happen if in the transition. Plus the other piece was when we went out, we thought we were going out for 2 weeks. And then suddenly 2 weeks became a month became 2 months, and the school year ended. So we sort of did some kind of adjustments and planning as we went, but it was definitely catch as catch can, and just sort of kind of move and try and make the best of it that you can. And basically what we tried to do was take this, which I think everybody can recognize pretty readily, and in many ways turn it into this. And so our idea initially, it was just sort of teachers were going to do what they've always done. It was just, instead of doing it sitting in front of a bunch of kids, they were actually going to be sitting in front of a bunch of screens. Some teachers this worked very well for, some teachers it didn't work as well, and same was with the kids. So what we learned primarily is that in-person and virtual are not the same thing. I think we kind of knew that going in, but definitely learning that experience, or definitely going through it, really kind of pointed out to us that we needed to approach our whole instruction differently. We couldn't just sort of let people do what they've always done, because there were definitely weaknesses that we had to address. So the things that we learned from the spring, that the students, and especially, but also the teachers, were very disconnected from each other. And that disconnection kind of led to a lot of different issues. The other thing we realized is that many of the teachers really built their instruction around the fact that the kids were there. And it's sort of nuanced, but you didn't really realize it, but just the idea that you could manage the kids a little bit better, you could have a better sense of what was actually going on, you could deal with the questions. It was far more interactive than the virtual experience was. I mean, the one that really struck me was in the first time one of our second grade teachers went on a virtual experience. I'll never forget him telling me this, that the first time he did it, he tried to do his entire 21 kids in one shot. And he said, sitting there looking at that field of 21, just, it didn't work for him. Actually, since he was using Google Meet, he could only see 16 of them at a time. So it really was something that he struggled with. And he had quickly adjusted to going to small group, but it was something that just that first initial piece, that it just the recognition that it was definitely something different. As we started working through this, we started to recognize more that the technology tools that we had in place, and actually a number of people were using, but they were using on a much more limited basis, became much more powerful to them, and something that he would really use to open doors for them as well as for their kids. Of course, pedagogy makes a difference. Good teachers are good teachers. It was interesting, good teachers in person are good teachers online, and the teachers who struggle in person definitely were struggling online. So we definitely realized that we have to make sure we're very, very concerted effort in trying to improve those instructional strategies for this fall. So what our big push basically was written around the idea of student-centered learning. And that's something that we've been working on and working with our teachers in a number of ways for quite a while. But again, it's really fascinating. I think I heard this earlier, don't ever miss the opportunity created by a good crisis. And, we had a situation where things that we've tried to do, we have a lot of very successful teachers, we have a lot of very successful students. And I think as they sit there and, kind of go through and we introduce new things to them, there's sort of a, well, do I really need to do this kind of attitude? Because we're doing fine. We really don't need to change. Suddenly now the rug was pulled out from under everybody, and they really realized that they definitely needed to change. You could not sit there and in a 45-minute to 50-minute period just sit there and talk to a computer screen like this. It had to be a different kind of instruction. And the piece that really stuck out to us was the student-centered idea, where our kids need to be more independent, and they have to have much greater ownership of their learning, so that it's not the teacher constantly directing what to do. It's definitely where you give them some guidance and direction, but the students are going to go off and do more work on their own. Also, we recognize the need for student choice, because that's sort of helpful on the motivational piece, because again, if the kids aren't there, we have to make sure that they're continuing to do the work. We want them to continue to do really good work. And we often found that if you give them a little bit more options, a few more choices, they get to kind of direct some of that. That certainly give them greater interest in what it is that they're doing. And peer interaction and review was something that, because the one piece that really stood out for us was the idea that everyone felt disconnected, as I said before. And so how do you kind of create those little ways to get people to talk to each other and just have some kind of interactions, be it face-to-face, which is the kind that we really want, but also we want to have other kinds of interactions as well. So having peer review and peer review provided opportunities for that. And something that just became nuanced for us as we looked at the tools that we were going to provide for this fall and reevaluating the tools that we currently had. Oftentimes in the past, when we looked at those tools, we often looked at them through the lens of the teacher. How were they going to support the teacher and support instruction? And the shift that came out of this was we really need to look at these tools at how they're going to support the students and how they're actually supporting learning. So that how is it that this tool, the student can use this tool to support the work that they do and help them gain more and kind of advanced in their learning. So what we're doing this summer, from one of the big pushes besides the student-centered learning, just to give them some model for teachers models to follow, is the idea of using the blended learning model, which works very well, obviously, because you have a combination of student or direct interaction with the teachers, as well as using some of the technology that's available. It's sort of a natural with this. The flipped classroom, and that's not that piece essentially that, we have teachers working as in cores and who are all teaching the same subject, and they're kind of rotating through creating lessons or small instructional pieces that are done, but they're videotaping them so that the time of the instructional time, so to speak, is not spent watching a video. That becomes something that the kids will do on their own. More project-based learning, again, to give the kids more time to do work. So it's not just us talking to the teachers, it's the kids spending time doing different projects, giving them either guides related to something in the curriculum, but we also are working to include more passion type projects. So the students, again, with the idea of student choice, so they have an opportunity to kind of pick from a range of topics, or if they can come up with a topic that will cover the same sort of material, but is something of their interest, they can certainly make that recommendation and go and move on from there. The one thing I'll say about all this, which I found very interesting, my background's in the high school, I have found it really amazing how good our elementary kids are student-centered and taking ownership and taking control. I know from a high school perspective, I always used to think, oh, they're too young, you have to really give them a lot of guidance, and it's really not true. We have kids, kids are very, very successful being fairly independent workers down in, first and second grade. And it's really actually kind of neat to see. The other piece that impacted us, and this was sort of a logistical issue, was what kind of schedule are we going to build? And it was, do we just take what we've always done, or do we kind of change it a little bit? And one of the things that came out of it was we realized we needed longer blocks for the kids, because virtual learning for us is taking longer than not shorter. Because if you're not going to make it strictly about talking to kids and just having direction from the teacher, but you're going to give the students more opportunities to do work and more opportunities to work on projects and work together, they need more time. So we've actually ended up creating a schedule that provides longer periods of time for our instruction. So just kind of, I think that, as you're thinking about these things, it's kind of interesting to think about what you're going to do differently, because what we're really looking to do is we're looking to just improve instruction generally, so that even when we go back and the kid and everyone's back, whenever that may be in the next year or two, that we're all back. These are skills that the teachers have picked up. It's also skills the students have picked up, and it's something that they'll be able to carry back with them when they come back indoors. So I wanted to try, 11 minutes. That was close.
Yeah, you did nice. Thank
That
you.
was close.
Thank you so much, and a lot to there of really just diving into it. And I think it works out well. And as we transition to Shannon, I'm really interested in hearing this because I had an opportunity to see you speak in Austin in September, and obviously things were a little bit different in September. And to
Right.
see the work that you were doing with the Texas Educational Agency then, and to see how that's evolved, essentially March 13th on for most districts, I think is pretty exciting. So. I know you're going to talk a little bit about that, and building off of what we just heard from Rick, I want to hear how you had that in the different learning models and what you're doing now.
Well, thanks, Matt. And I was taking copious notes. I had lots of ahas from Rick's. One that I hadn't really been contemplating is the assumption that time translates from face-to-face to virtual, and that in reality, our pedagogy is obviously shifting, but that the way we engage students in the interactions in a virtual world really does require more time. And so thank you for that, Rick. I'm Shannon Terry. I am relatively new to the Texas Education Agency. I serve as a division director of program integration strategy, and I'm going to talk pretty fast. So if you'll wind your ears up to listen fast. My purpose is to give you an awareness of the state response to COVID. It has been quite robust. It has been certainly riddled with challenges, as you can only imagine. TEA's role in these efforts is we're responsible for coordinating the flow of information from the state to the districts. We're helping districts solve problems and provide guidance to aid districts' decision making. So with that, I'm going to highlight one of the resources called Texas Home Learning 3.0. But before I do that, I bet the challenges that I'm about to list will resonate with you as universal in nature. Certainly at the core of our focus is equity. And there are many challenges that we faced pre-COVID, and now that may be amplified in our COVID reality. So some of those, as we look across the landscape of Texas, access to devices, very universal. Connectivity, we all have been working towards eradicating the digital divide. Teacher support for online learning. We know that, as Rick pointed out, teachers are at different levels of proficiency and comfort in terms of that continuum of providing online instruction and what that looks like. Another variable in the state of Texas, we have over 1,200 independent school districts, along with charters as well. Publicly supported charters, and differentiating support for the diverse landscape from rural to urban to suburban has been really challenging because the needs are different. The capacities in each of those settings is different as well. And then I know all of us have experienced the changing guidance from multiple channels, even to the extent that we're hearing noise in the field, if you will, around the challenges it's presenting, and certainly empathetic to that as we try to stand stable on these shifting sands. So let's take a look at Texas Home Learning. Again, I'm going to go pretty quickly. I'm going to highlight a few of these slides, and the first slide will be slide 3. And slide 3 actually helps define what is the Texas Home Learning phases, what happened at the state level when we closed down March 16th. So we had the school closures. Then we created what was called Texas Home Learning 1.0, sometimes very much a parent-facing resource so that parents could access content and instructional supports along the way. We made a provision for those students that did not have access to Wi-Fi that they could order print copies of the resources that were also being deployed digitally. Then we moved to Texas Home Learning 2.0, certainly with the concerns of what has been dubbed the COVID slide. We wanted to enhance what had been developed for Texas Home Learning 1.0. If you Google Texas Home Learning, you can see the first iteration and then the second iteration as well. And now what we're going to highlight today is Texas Home Learning 3.0, which is really optional instructional materials, technology, and PD at no cost to our districts. It's not a requirement, it's an opt-in, and districts can opt in at any time. So in the next slide, what's different about 3.0 from 1.0 and 2.0? Of course, as Rick has already alluded to, we had to turn on a dime. So it's a crisis response and continues to be a crisis response. Initially, it was PDF packets. Now we're offering some robust technology solutions and working through the connectivity issues with the governor's task force called Operation Connectivity, and have really explored some innovative technology to that end, which happy to share as a link because they're all new to me, frankly, and thankful for the collective brain power supporting how we eradicate that digital divide. So who is this for? Originally 1.0 and 2.0 was really a student-facing resource, but really not requiring a full-time teacher, really supporting our parents in supporting their children as a necessity, and a new frontier, as a matter of fact, in terms of the degree to which they'd be supporting their students as teachers. Unlike 1.0 and 2.0, Texas Home Learning 3.0 is designed for teachers and districts, and it does require a skilled educator to be successful. So while there's synchronous learning options within the solutions and asynchronous, we know the importance of the teacher in the interaction with students and instruction of students, and we really are heralding that as the key component of this response. TexasHomeLearning.org was linked to online resources and customizable PDF packets. However, in this new version, we really are allowing people to opt in partially, fully. We really are wanting to customize for the district's needs. As I mentioned earlier, the diverse landscape presents some challenges and some unique needs that need to be met. When we move to slide 8, and all of this, by the way, can be accessed if you simply type in TEA COVID or Texas Education Agency COVID. You can see the robust response to the districts in the state. In slide 8, what we're highlighting here are the suite of resources that have been compiled in a very aggressive timeline. Again, emphasizing they're freely accessible, they are optional, and they are aligned. So we're really focusing on bringing in curriculum content for the 4 core as a starting point, pre-K-12. We're also providing a suite of technology resources from single sign-on to a robust LMS. We'll talk about that in a moment. And then supporting our districts with professional development that are delivered through a variety of formats. When we move to slide 13, there are some of the content, by the way. When we move to slide 13 for the essence of time, here's where we really look at our freely accessible technology solutions. What I draw your attention to, and at the risk of being redundant, is that the solutions can be used independently or in combination together. And the arrow at the bottom indicates the features that move from low to high, because some of our districts are well equipped to flip the switch and go to remote learning, while others will need a more robust solution. So the first is really looking at how can we organize content and allow for a single point of access. You see some of the resources there that are being deployed and considered. The same is true with classroom management. By the way, it's not all inclusive. These were just examples for our different audiences that may have familiarity or not with the different types of solutions we're proposing and delivering. The classroom management system, this is a middle solution where we're really looking at tools and giving districts what's been called the white glove treatment around a solution for collaboration, group editing, teachers assigning and collecting work. And then the last is, if you're not aware, Texas funding is based on student attendance. So it's really created some head spins, if you will, in terms of some of our statutes and regulations that we're needing to align to. So learning management system provides the most robust suite of opportunities for our districts with the grade book, some progress monitoring, et cetera. And there are a couple of examples there of what a learning management system is. In terms of the next slide, of course, you're probably asking, well, and by the way, these are some of the more robust system capabilities. We are definitely looking at how do we, again, back to that comment around equity as a assigned priority. We're looking at 508 accessibility features and really how we can ensure that this supports all students. So the question you may be asking yourself is, well, how long is Texas going to do this? And how are districts opting in or accessing these resources? We are negotiating for the LMS specifically for 2 years. So our Texas districts will have if they opt in, access to the selected LMS for 2 years. And you can see there in the adoption process, not wanting to read the slide to you, that it really is the LEA indicating their interest, and then a specialist is assigned to them. Then we do we have a solutions architect that works to make sure it's seamless in terms of activating it for all the teachers and students, as well as having a parent portal for them to access and follow along, if you will. And so that's how our districts are able to opt in. Very simple process, and literally hope to have that up in the next 2 weeks for our districts. One thing that was really important to point out is Operation Connectivity. That is the governor's task force looking at different options for connectivity. And what we've had to clarify across the state is Texas Home Learning does not directly provide devices or internet access, but instead Operation Connectivity and Texas Home Learning, they work together and complement each other. The next slide actually speaks to the PD, because we know the importance of supporting teachers. If we have high expectations, we need high levels of support. So there are 3 buckets, if you will, of support in the way of PD. There are free options available, and then we suspect that districts will connect with those vendors and actually, through their own funding mechanisms, extend the learning as needed in their own context. So we're really focusing on what are remote learning models, what are the instructional materials that are being deployed or available, again, across the 4 core, so we can operationalize those, and then how to, if you're adopting the LMS, that more robust solution, how does the LMS that's being deployed work for you, and how do you do what you need to do inside of that? Finally, what is our release schedule? And then a quick summary, actually. Our release schedule is very aggressive. So yes, we are still sleeping at night. I know that many of us have gone without sleep for a bit, trying to support all of our learners and teachers and families, as it were. But this is our release schedule. So in August, we will have the LMS and other tech available in terms of that continuum you saw. And then we'll roll out the curriculum as time progresses, because we're certainly wanting to vet it. It needs to be aligned to our state standards. The call out there I want to highlight for you is that you can opt in at any time. So there's not this window for our districts to be able to say, well, you only have this long to opt in, because we know with so many unknowns that districts may want to opt in October 15th as opposed to August 15th. And lastly, one thing that's been really important that we've emphasized, because communication's hard, and especially at the state level, is here's what Texas Home Learning is as a response to COVID, and here's what it's not. It's completely free and it's optional. Of course, it's designed to engage students. So we're looking at instructional frameworks that are research-based and able to leverage something tried and true. Robust resources, customizable, and certainly trying to mitigate the challenges that are outlined in the earlier slides I didn't pause on, that our districts and teachers are facing. But what it is not is a requirement of the state, and that's been one of the most important messages to emphasize. It's not a continuation of any particular district's scope and sequence. We've not tapped one district and it just made it a state level option. It's not an endorsement or recommendation of any of the texts, because we know that there are quality texts being implemented across the state. We just had to make some choices, limited funding, as you can imagine. And then most of all, it's not a full-time virtual school run by Texas Education Agency. So I encourage you to reach out to me and or to look at the TEA website. I'm happy to answer any questions around the support we're providing, or if you have insights to share with us, we are all ears.
Awesome, thank you so much. And one of the benefits of the Tech and Learning event is that all of the resources are going to be shared with those who attended the event, because I know, Shannon, you had some slides that you didn't have an opportunity to go deep into, and I know we only have between 12 and 13 minutes to share, and that was probably more of a 90-minute presentation to really get in deep and discuss. So for those of you who want to learn more, both from Rick's piece and Shannon, those are going to be all posted. And as we transition to Mike, it really is a great summary of all of this, because he's going to be talking about the needs of all learners And to do that, it encompasses everything you've learned in the last 2 days, and then to hear how he's doing that with his team now. So I'd love to pass it over to you, Mike, and take us home.
Sure. So I am the Chief Technology Officer for New Trier Township High School. We are in the northern suburbs of Chicago. And what was really critical for our leadership team as we began planning really at the end of the previous school year were these overarching goals that you see. We want to make sure that everybody's safe and healthy, but we also want to ensure that our students are continuing to get a quality education, that we're really focusing on professional development and the learning, but also on the well-being of our staff and our students. And we really want to make sure that whatever model we select, that it is efficient for our teachers, that they're really not having to reinvent the wheel. They're not having to have multiple lesson plans for students that are in person and students that are at home, that it's really effective in terms of the quality of the audio and the video and the learning that the kids are having that are remotely. And I think, as was stated earlier, the equity piece, that the students that are at home aren't getting less of an education. So those were really things that were important to us. And we really wanted to emphasize to all of our stakeholders is that flexibility and patience, that you're on 3.0 of your model, Shannon, and it's going to continue to evolve, and leaders are doing their best with the information that they have. And so continuing to be responsive and nimble in your communication and in the design of your plan. And so I think you'll see some of that in our plan. But the thing that really stands out to us is that we know that our teachers are going to be teaching and our students are going to be learning. And so as we get ready for the fall, we wanted to make sure that our design of what instruction was going to look like had options, because we don't know what things are going to look like 3 weeks from now. It is very unlikely that in 4 or 5 weeks when we return to school that all students are going to be there, but the model that we built has to have that ability to go in there. It is very likely that we may be in some hybrid option at the beginning of the year. We may not start in a hybrid option, but we know that when we do return to school, some students are going to be in school, some families are going to choose to stay home. And we're probably going to do so in a small scenario as we build capacity and build some expertise in there. And there may be some time, and it may be at the start of the year. That's what several districts are doing, as we talked about at the beginning of this meeting, where everyone's going to start remotely. But we wanted to make sure that our design could handle all 3 of these models. And so we've built out a tentative calendar that really, at the end of each week, reevaluates where we're at and what the model needs to be, so that we have flexibility. So we always have our 2 institute days at the start of the year, and you can see that we're going to have some days where we're 100% remote. And then we will reevaluate and see how our adults are processing teaching in school or teaching remotely. We'll see what the situation is. And if the situation warrants it, we may start moving to what are called, and you'll see in our scheduling, we've moved to a block schedule. It is not a traditional schedule that our high school has ever used in the past, but we felt that a block schedule was something that's important. I'll go into some details about that, but we wanted to have a block schedule where half of our students might come on these 2 days and the other half of our students, and we split them up alphabetically to do that. And then we, again, reevaluate again, and we can go forward to increasing. We can keep it the same. If we decide to fall back to 100% remote, we have those options to do that. You'll see that on our schedule, we have these what are called Trevian days. Those are days that we felt like it was important. We didn't want to overwhelm things. We wanted to have one day that was going to be 100% remote, where teachers could introduce lessons. But what's key to this is an overarching principle is that relationship piece with students. We know that our teachers really value that in-person relationship. And so if we can structure our time and our day to make sure that our teachers and our students are getting that need met. So here's an example of what our schedule looks like. We are a very large district of about 4,000 students. And so we've built a schedule that on those Trebian days, we're gonna have a traditional 9-period schedule that lasts, as you can see, about 35 minutes, just to introduce some concepts and get to know. And then we have this block schedule. We felt from a social emotional level that it was important that we had longer blocks of time, that teachers and our students didn't get overloaded with Zoom meetings. Teachers could chunk lessons. We wanted to make sure that if teachers wanted to break out kids into small groups, they could structure their lessons and activities kind of like you do it in elementary level into learning centers. And so you might be able to have 6 or 7 students in a breakout room while other students are working independently on the work you've assigned them. We know that not all of our students are going to have a full schedule of 5 periods in a day, so there's going to be some built-in breaks for them to work, to connect with teachers. And then we've introduced this concept of a 10th period, an X block. And that period is really going to be used for ongoing professional development. In this blue-green schedule, that day is really built in every other day. So 2 days a week, there will be time for professional development, teacher office hours, department meeting, whatever the priorities are and whatever the needs are, we've got a built-in block of time to be flexible and to offer professional development through our support systems. I've already talked about this, but it's just really important for you to know that those are overarching principles as we looked at the technologies that we felt were necessary. And so one of the things that we are doing, we have a little over 200 classrooms. And so about a third of our rooms are going to start with a really quality camera that will allow that teacher to zoom in on a whiteboard. It might be doing a demonstration or a lab. And we're starting them in content areas where we know there's a lot of that hands-on demonstration types of instruction. So in science classes, in what might be hands-on culinary or applied arts types of classes. But we're also seeding these in other content areas to build some capacity and to see if there is some interest. Because we know that the quality of the video is really going to engage students at home. They have to be able to see what the teacher is instructing. And so we've purchased some tripods with these. We're really outfitting these classrooms and have already done some professional development videotape with some teachers who have been teaching summer school around that. Again, just as some other people have talked about, standardizing on a learning management system, and really one thing that our team's district has done is really design some consistent templates so that our student workflow, our kids always know where to go when they're looking for the Zoom link for their class. They always know where to go to find the resources that the teacher put up there. And then we're also investing in a district-wide platform for our students and our teachers so that they have a tool for screencasting, easy online tools for editing and uploading to the learning management system. And so our next steps are really just ongoing communications with these different stakeholder groups, continuing to collaborate and plan around professional development, monitoring with our Department of Health, and then just continuing, again, to be nimble and responsive to whatever's happening, but making sure that in the end that we're getting a really sound educational experience for our students. So Matt, I'll turn that back over to you. I know you've probably got some questions.
I was just checking through. So looking through that for all three presenters, and I know we don't have a lot of time, what would be one takeaway from each piece that if you said this is going to be the most critical, what would be your recommendations within your own realms, because you come from different platforms of bringing it all together? What would be, Shannon, you're first on my screen, and then Rick and Mike, in 1 minute each, like what would be that one thing, your first step? Because sometimes just that momentum is tricky to have.
Well, much like you, I participated as a learner and had already referenced the being cognizant of the implications of time in a virtual setting. I also appreciated what Mike had to say around district design templates. In terms of an initial first step, which may seem so simple and basic, but it's the communication across all of the stakeholders. I think to have a strong communication strategy with all of these excellent ideas that have been put forward is going to be paramount, so that we can all have collective efficacy as we're supporting our learners.
No, I think that's great. And as a district leader, I'm finding that out. Even when there's nothing to share, people just want to hear there's nothing right now, because it's that silence that sometimes increases that stress. Rick, could you share one of the things, next step for you, or first step, I should
I
say?
have to apologize for my laptop dying right at the end, so I cut you off.
Well, you're back now. You're good to go.
I had to sneak back. I had to get another device. You have to have enough technology. For us, it's definitely student empowerment, and all that goes around with that. And it's like I said, it's something we've been working on a while, but we just look at this as an opportunity to really look at how we're teaching and really kind of do some shifting of things that we might normally not be able to do. And it's all just written around basically trying to make this far more, it's, you know, student centric, and empower the students to be more heavily involved in what they're doing and how they're doing it and how they're managing it. There's a lot of, we have a lot of training to do towards it, but I think just getting that message across and getting the tools in place is kind of the first step towards making all that happen.
Awesome. Mike, what do you have for us?
Probably my one takeaway is identifying all the different critical areas that we knew needed to be addressed for the reopening of school year, and getting the right people on the bus for those committees. It was really an extensive group of district and building leaders, teachers, teacher leaders, support staff, to just start planning and working in separate entities, but then coming back together on a bi-weekly basis to communicate, as Shannon said, and refine the plan. And just because it's overwhelming for just one person or one group of people to try and do all of these, logistical and communication and scheduling challenges, but just to really be thoughtful as a leadership team around planning and communication.
No, I think that's fabulous, and I think that's a great way to sum it up, to really looking at it in reverse, what Mike was talking about, finding out that first step, what needs to be done, who's with you, then make sure to get that message out that Shannon was saying. Take that first step in the communication piece, and finally, with Rick talking about empowering our students and learners at that point, and our educators as well, to move forward. And I hope, knowing Tech and Learning as they are, that has been encompassed in the last 2 days, is really empowering us as leaders and learners to bring back this information to our own districts, working in partnership with some of the amazing sponsors, well, all of the amazing sponsors, whatever one fits your needs in your district. Make sure to check them out, because events like this are not possible without their contributions and their efforts and their thought leadership to bring the solutions to some of our problems that we have. So make sure to visit our sponsors. There'll still be time for that. And I want to thank Tech and Learning. I think, yep, Kelly is still here. I know there's a wrap-up piece, but I just want to thank you all for this great 2 days and being a part of this, and Shannon and Rick and Mike for sharing your piece about new learning models.
Thank you, Matt.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. So I want to thank everyone for attending 2 days worth of sessions with us today for the Tech and Learning Virtual Leadership Summit. And of course, thank you to our sponsors, Guide K-12, Now Forecast 5 Analytics, Mediasite, Prezi, Nuriva, and Boxlight. Again, if you go to the Conference Hub, all of our sponsors should be still available for another 15 or 20 minutes. You can go ahead, visit their booth, and there is a Zoom link. You can live chat with them, stop in and say hi and earn yourself some passports or prizes. We will be pulling those winners probably around 2:15, so you still have some time to go ahead and visit them and get your extra entries. Thank you again, everyone, for presenting today. We will get everything into the Conference Hub by the end of the day today, and we look forward to seeing you at our next event. Thank you.
Thank you.